nightcap. The narrator takes stock of the bedroom, the area where she's now forced to live, and she looks out the window, which she tells us is made of shatterproof glass. There's this threat of suicide, right? They're being held captive. Then she walks downstairs through the sitting room, looking at all the different old possessions, things she calls archaic or sort of past tense, and into the kitchen where Rita is. So this Rita character is a Martha, in other words, a kind of homemaker, caretaker. And Rita, the Martha, gives tokens, which are the new form of money or currency, to the narrator, Handmaid, to take to the store. And in particular, it's a token for chicken and for eggs. So again, there's going to be this reference to fertility or fecundity, right? A chicken lays an egg. Good morning, buenos dias, bonjour, sin chao, ni hao. What's up, guys and gals? Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 2 of The Handmaid's Tale. It's a dystopian novel, as we talked about in Chapter 1, written by Margaret Atwood, very pertinent to current events today. But also directly drawing on events from World War II, 1948, Stalinism, the early 80s in America, and the moral majority, and the rise of the Christian right as a... Okay, so Chapter 2 is the first chapter in the section titled Shopping. So Atwood always starts the chapter with a few words or a message, like a signifier of what's going to come next. A chair, a table, a lamp. Okay, so she's telling us this chapter is about possessions. It's about things and ownerships and who gets what, how the property's been divided in this new world, okay? And our narrator has nothing. She is property. As this character ponders and thinks about the bric-a-brac and the different items around the room, she's thinking about a regression, about how time is being reversed, right? This idea that progress is linear, the case is not so. It's a palimpsest. Things get rubbed out. Our progress can be erased. The progress of the women's rights movements, of individual rights and second wave feminism, it's all scratched out. And then these religious fundamentalists are going to rewrite history on top of that past. So when the narrator's thinking back to her time in a re-education center, this red center where Aunt Lydia was, she often quotes Aunt Lydia. And these words, these insightful words from Aunt Lydia, give us sort of a perspective or a view into how the fundamentalists and the totalitarian state is now thinking and being operated. Lydia tells us, quote, "Think of it as being in the army," meaning our narrator is doing a duty. So her job, her role as handmaid is her duty. Her body has been sort of drafted or taken up into the service of the state, and the state wants her to make babies. So we get into a description of habit, a habit in this case being the red uniform or costume of the handmaid, but Atwood's also punning on a habit like a tradition or a custom or something that we do thoughtlessly, one of the actions we take every day that just becomes our norm. It becomes something that your body does by rote, mechanically. The red, of course, also represents passion, anger, blood, the flesh, the literal things of the body. The handmaid is a literal object in the sense that she's a piece of meat. She's controlled by the state. Her body is used for the state, not for herself. There's the white wings part of the costume. So you're picturing like the blinders a horse wears. You only go on a straight path. You can't look to side. There's no peripheral vision. Just like her thoughts and mind are being driven in one direct area. Her costume, the purity of the wings, keep her mind focused on only the clean thoughts or the pure thoughts that she's been inculcated with in this re-education center. This costume, and the way it really is a reference to something like a horse would wear, it's also the first kind of allusion to this idea that the handmaids are like livestock, right? They're like animals being kept. They're really a capitalist system, so currency or money or the dollar has been devalued and no longer exists. What's been replaced in its stake is a system of tokens, and the tokens have pictures on them. Well, why is there a picture of a chicken or a picture of an egg? because the women aren't allowed to read. They've had their words, much like their names, taken from them. We get a token with a picture of a chicken or a token with a picture of eggs, and then she has to take those and exchange them with the barter system. Presumably the chicken here is also a reference to a chicken who lays eggs. Another example of the handmaid being compared, or a metaphor drawn to livestock. The handmaids themselves are going to be the chicken. They sit and they lay eggs. That's their job. That's their role. Classically, the Martha comes from in the Bible where Jesus stopped at Mary's house. Martha was the one who was too busy to listen to him because she had to do all the preparations and take care of the house and home. Rita here is a woman of color who's being repressed and taken advantage of, and she's too busy to think about all the things that our handmaids think about and all the actual labor of the house. Where I am is not a prison, but a privilege, says Aunt Lydia. This is literal irony. It's doublethink, like Orwell's classic two minds, meaning of the opposite. This is irony. They are in a prison. For our narrator, it's literally a prison. She's being kept there. She's being guarded. She can't escape. But Lydia, on the other hand, is telling you where I am is not a prison, but a privilege. So the truth becomes a lie, and a lie becomes the truth. It's a world turned upside down. She goes to the room, and she says, "Not my room. I refuse to say my room." So why does she not want to take possessive of it? Why will she not own it? Because it's not hers. She's telling us that she's being owned. In this chapter about possessions and things, she is one of the possessions. She is one of the things, rather than the other way around. She is not a possessor. She's not an owner like the commander or the wife or the state. She tells us again, a sitting room in which I never sit. I only stand or kneel. So it's again this idea that the purpose of things has changed. The same way the gymnasium is now a place where people sleep rather than a place where people work out or do activity. When she passes down the stairs, the narrator tells us she sees herself in the mirror, but it's a mirror that's distorted, it's fisheye. So it's like the world itself, which is a distortion of America, a bent or a convex shape where the norms of society have changed and shifted. So too the narrator sees her image in the mirror, and it's bent, it's shifted. She's no longer the self she knew from before. So even talk is controlled here. It's a world where gossip no longer exists. Our narrator tells us she longs for an exchange of words. So she's hoping for freedom of speech, right? That freedom to talk, to chat is gone. She no longer has that. Now there's just whispers, people being stabbed with knitting needles, poisoning themselves with toilet cleaner, jealousy. So they're turning domestic goods in the house into weapons because that's all they have access to. Again, this idea of yearning comes up when the narrator sees the bread being kneaded under Martha's hands, and she needs to be touched, right? So she tells us she sees the bread and she feels a hunger to commit the act of touch. This is also when the first memory of her man, her former partner, her husband comes up. So it's Luke of course of the Gospel. And we find out that Luke was quite pedantic, so he was being patronizing to our narrator as well. He was explaining or mansplaining to her Latin words like fraternize or sororize, etc. Direct quote, "This is the kind of touch they like. Folk art, archaic, made by women in their spare time from things that have no further use. A return to traditional values." Right? Just this idea of winding the clock back, right? Margaret Atwood's writing this in the early 80s during the original MAGA. Ronald Reagan's slogan for election in 1980 was, "Let's make America great again." And that's the context which she's writing. When you have the Baptists from the southern United States preaching on television, televangelists, and they're talking about banning abortion, getting rid of divorce, they have this sort of idea that the morality of the family in America is crumbling. And so Reagan's original slogan, "Let's make America great again." And this is the return to traditional values that have taken place in our book.